Hey everyone, it's Matt again. Today I'm going to show you how to build this right angle dual drive adapter. So like always, before we start, what we need to do is make sure we have everything we need. We have our right angle drive housing, we have our output threads, we have an end cap, we have our 2 gears, we have our 2 shafts, and we have our adapter key. Now putting these all together will give us a 1-to-1 ratio dual drive right angle. This means from this side of the housing there will be an output, and from the side there will also be an output, both giving 1-to-1 from 1 input to 1 output. And to get things started, we need to mount these gears onto these shafts. So let's get going. So now that we have our gears done, we need to place them inside the housing. Greasing up the gear, you want to make sure you fill in all the cavities in the teeth. Make sure you get some on that little tip there. And this one will go in to this little end cap here, like so. On a normal right angle adapter, normally this shaft would go into an end cap, but because this is a dual drive adapter, the shaft goes through the input and right out to the output, making the same 1-to-1 connection. So let's get this greased as well. Again, you want to make sure the entire shaft is coated in a generous coating of grease, like so. So this shaft, because there's nowhere to place it in the meantime and it goes directly in, we're just going to place it directly in, like so. Give it a couple turns, just make sure everything feels nice, make sure you're not hooked on anything, there's no burrs or anything it's catching on. And everything feels good, so let's get the threads on this end. What I like to do is also grease these threads a little bit, just so they screw into the adapter easier. Now we take our first thread cap, go on as tight as you can by hand, and then tighten the rest of the way with your wrench. You don't want to snug these up too tight, because if you push them in too tight, what it can possibly do is flex the shaft, and then what you'll get is binding within the gears, and you don't want any of that. Now before we put our other threaded cap in, we want to put the end cap in with our other gear and shaft. Again, get a little bit of grease on the threads. We'll take our shaft, gear, and end cap and slide it inside. And again, tighten with the wrench. Now at this stage, you can turn the gears if you line it up correctly, but because it kind of wobbles around as it is right now, sometimes it won't mesh properly, so it's best to test this once the other threading is installed. Take our final thread and tighten up with your wrench. Now because this ratio is a 1-to-1, it'll mean 1 rotation in this side will receive 1 rotation out on both of these output shafts. So before we go any further, let's test it to make sure everything is working smoothly. We take our adapter key, in this case a 104 square, slide it inside. There's a little retaining pin inside, so it just pops in and pops out, but holds in place. So normally with adapters, when you turn the input shaft, you want to be able to turn it by hand. With right angle adapters, they're a little more difficult and they are a little more stiff, and it's a little hard to grab onto this little tip. So sometimes you will have to get a little leverage in there. But in this case, everything seems to be moving as it should. So now that this adapter is assembled, let's get the mark of a 1000 on there, and then this is ready for our customer. So this dual drive adapter is done. We've also got our engraving in there showing it's a 1-to-1, a 1000 ratio. Everything works smooth, everything feels nice, and now it's ready to go out to the customer. And that's how you build a right angle dual drive adapter. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them in the comment section below. As always, like and subscribe, and we'll have another video for you next week. See you then.